Create with Fran Sydney. Hello everyone, welcome to episode 41. Today we are going to talk about how we can change our life so much that nobody would even recognize us. And this is all due to mindset, to pondering, to reflection, and to deciding what is really important for us. Where do we want to see ourselves in 20 years, in 30 years? And for this reason, I have invited to the podcast our friend Warren Bell, who will tell us about his journey from a troubled child who didn't believe at all in himself to a mature professional who now takes care of other people professionally. So thank you for coming here, Warren, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Franz, for having me on the show. It's quite a milestone, really, in being able to talk about what had happened in my past. So, from discharge from hospital, I went immediately into foster care, where I was there for about 3 years. From there, the foster mother got ill, and we were taken back into care by social services. We had a period where we stayed in a unit, and then slowly there was a reintroduction back to the two parents that we were removed from. And we were removed from them for very good reason, because they weren't capable of parenting. They had two previous children that had already been removed. And during my time with them, it was, to say the least, traumatic. And what I experienced in that house with them, I would probably say that no one should have to go through. If I can describe it in one word, annihilation. That was my daily existence, fearing annihilation. We were there till about, I think I was probably a few months short of my 6th birthday. My mother had deserted the house yet again, and my father decided that he couldn't cope and decided to give us up full time. And we then went to a Catholic children's home run by Maris Sisters in a small village in Gloucestershire, where I was there until I was 16. There were no real issues up until I was 11, when we left the village to go to school in a big city, because the village was very small. It was quite isolated, but we were insulated in the village. People came out from outside to go to school. We were there already. It was a small village of about 450 people. Everybody knew everybody. But the problem started really when I went to a big city school. When I was younger, households had two parents. They had mum and dad, regardless of the problems, regardless of the situation. They stayed together. And from about the age of 11, I realised that I was different. I didn't have that. And I couldn't be that. I couldn't be that kid in care. I had to be anybody but that kid in care, because it was too vulnerable. If people knew I was the kid in care, I'll be picked on, I'll be bullied, I'll be hurt, I'll be rejected. And really, from about the age of 11, life became about survival and surviving and getting through each day unscathed. And what I mean by unscathed, I think, to avoid any potential for being hurt and rejected. And so huge barriers went up. I really couldn't focus at school. I couldn't concentrate. And you can't do that when life is about surviving. You have to get through each day as best that you can, trying as best that you can to blend in, trying as best that you can not to get spotted. But the paradox of that is you're always spotted for the wrong reasons. So I was always getting myself into bother. I was always getting myself into trouble. I was always making poor decisions. I pretty much quickly decided, I guess, that I probably wasn't going to amount to much, do much, be much, and have much. One of the defining moments as I got towards the end of my time at the children's home, I remember two of the nuns saying to me, "You're never really going to be much or do much or have much." And I think from that basis, I kind of thought, well, if that's how I'm viewed, then that's how I'll be. And so, yeah.
Terrible thing to tell to a child, or even as a self-limiting belief. After all this, you already thought, well, I don't have anything to look forward to. But then these adult people, they didn't realize, of course, but they thought, oh, poor thing, you're never going to get it anywhere. But how sad that we can project this to young people. What was the effect on your mind to hear that?
I think it was in my mind anyway, but to have someone say that to you, I think at that point I kind of just shrugged and thought, yeah, I don't really care. And I left the children's home at 16 and tried desperately hard to hold my life together, but failed to hold it together. I had this ability to put something together, some semblance of normality, if you like, whatever normality is. But unfortunately, I couldn't hold it together. So my life was up and down, putting it together, holding down a job or relationship for several months, but then sabotaging it because it didn't fit with me. Things didn't go well for me, didn't go right. Things don't work out. So when things are working out, because it doesn't feel right, you then set about destroying it in whatever way, and you make poor choices and you make poor decisions, and then things return to nothing. And
can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
You were doing, that's what we talk a lot about in RTT, you were doing what is familiar to you. So I'm in trouble, I'm a troubled child, a troubled teen, nothing is gonna work out, whatever I do is gonna go wrong, because I don't believe I'm gonna get anywhere. So you were so stuck in this familiarity of everything going wrong, you wouldn't expect anything else. Is that correct? Is that what you're saying?
It is correct, yes. You can't expect anything else. You have nothing else at all to go on, okay? Your mind, your beliefs shape everything that you do. When you are a young child and you've gone through trauma, your brain is hardwired to that trauma, okay? And not only is it hardwired, but you expect and need to see what you believe. And if you're not in the reality that caused the trauma, you recreate the trauma and you replay the trauma because it feels right, okay? And because of the fear and the terror that was instilled in me as a child, I recreated that over and over again, okay, in the decisions and the choices that I made, okay? And you don't even know that that's what you're doing. You don't even know. You think life is failing because life is failing. You have no ability to understand why life is failing. You just think it is, okay? And eventually, life becomes what it is, and you accept it as normal, and you don't aspire to be anything or do anything or have anything, and you get to a point where you just accept the reality of your existence, that it won't change, it can't change, and this is pretty much the sum total of what it's going to be and how it's going to be, and you try and get through every day as best that you can, whatever that might be, whatever that might look like, sound like. You just get through. Eventually, I gravitated towards what you might say were the wrong people, but no, they were the right people, because they mirrored me. And those people were involved in, various things that, went against the kind of law, getting into trouble. But getting into trouble was just a reflection of who I thought I was, and being told that I was wrong and bad and guilty really reflected everything that I thought. And I used to shrug as if to say, yeah, I know. You don't have to tell me. I know this is who I am. And that went on really until I was about 25 was when I started to make changes. And I think I'd reached the point where I really couldn't go on and continue doing what I was doing, because it was just awful. There was no quality of life. There was no joy or pleasure. Everything was just, you lived day to day to get through each day as best that you could. But you reach a point in life where you think, I can't keep doing this. And at that point, I don't think I was actually ready for wholesale change. I was ready for some kind of change. And I wouldn't say I was wholly committed to change, but I knew that some change had to occur. I was still hoping that somebody was going to make the changes for me, and was going to come along and make my life okay and make it all right. I was still kind of convinced that, I wasn't wholly responsible for what was happening in my world, and there were other people that were involved in it, making it what it was. So I still tended to kind of look outside of me and think, well, if that wasn't happening, or if they didn't do that, or if they did do that, I wouldn't be like this. So there were changes that were occurring, but actually I kept getting drawn back in to things that still reflected who I believed I was. And that was at the core that I was nothing and nobody. And that I was never going to be anything and anybody. And you kind of get drawn back in. It's really hard. Till eventually, one day, I'd actually reached the point that I'd had enough. I'd had enough of the existence that I was living. And from that point, I made a conscious choice and a decision to pack a bag and leave the town where I was staying and never go back. And I knew that when I went to the phone box to tell my sister that I was coming for the weekend, I was never going back. And so I did. I went to the coach station, I bought a coach ticket, I packed a bag, I put that bag over my shoulder, I walked out of the house I was living in, I got on that coach, and I never went back. I have been back, but I say what I mean when I say when I never went back. I never went back to the life that I came from and the life that I was living. And I didn't know what I was going to. I didn't know how it was going to be. What I did know is that I was fully responsible now for my life. It was down to me. It was down to me now. I was either going to sink or swim. And I certainly wasn't going to sink, because part of me didn't want to give people the satisfaction of sinking and then I become another care home statistic. And people would say, oh yes, Warren, he was in a children's home. Yes, is it any wonder that he turned out the way he did? And I didn't want to give people the satisfaction of being able to say that. So that was a bit of a driver as well. And I arrived in where I'm living now on a Thursday evening. And on a Thursday, the jobs came out in the local paper. So on the Friday, I bought the paper, I looked in it, and there was a job with the local mental health trust for a nursing assistant. Now, I'd never done anything like that in my life. I read the job advert and I thought, well, actually, I could do that. Not really knowing the full extent of what the job entailed. I mean, a job advert is brief.
That's good that you have this belief that you could do that. You believed that you could do something, There was quite a change in your mindset.
Yeah, well, I just thought I could do it. And so I applied in the very early stages of moving to the town I moved to. And I got an interview. And I had the interview in the morning, and in the late afternoon I was called by one of the interviewers, and she said to me, "Thank you for coming. We think you're very brave. We'd like to offer you the job." But they said, "We'd like you to work in a different environment rather than the acute mental health setting. We want you to work in a rehab setting," which was a different environment, which was fine by me. And I took the job. I accepted the offer. But in the January, which was about 2 months after I'd arrived in the new place where I was living, I was given a book. And the book was Louise Hay, You Can Heal Your Life. And I'd never read a book in my life, not front to back, and finished it. And that book, for me, I'd never read a self-help book, was the catalyst for change, because I read it front to back, as it says, and then I started at the front again, and I started doing the exercises. And things started to come into my awareness that I'd never realized before. And it started that journey of looking at myself, looking at my beliefs, looking at my feelings. And the more I did the exercises in there, the more things started to come into my awareness. You know, new information. It was, in fact, I could honestly say, was flooding in. And it was amazing. And that was just the start. I started the job and I absolutely loved it. I took to it like a duck to water. I progressed. I went back to college to do a diploma in welfare studies. I passed that just about, I have to say. Still struggling a little with my own sense of self and self-belief and so on, but I got through it. I applied to go to university. I got in to do my nursing training, and I've been a registered nurse, mental health nurse, for 18 years. I've been in mental health for 22. I've worked with adults and children, and I now impart what I learnt to those young people who say to me at our first meeting, "You're the first person that's ever made sense." And I think the reason I make sense is because I made sense of who I was and what I went through. I made sense of the fact that the beliefs that I held were what I needed to experience, what I needed to see, and the feelings was how I needed to feel, because that confirmed who I was based on what had happened to me. And I lived that out continuously. But to change that, one has to look at oneself and look at the thoughts that they have and the core beliefs, what we call that internal working model, which for me said, I'm nothing, I'm nobody, I'm never going to be anything, have anything, do anything. And the way I changed that was looking at those beliefs, looking at those thoughts, created that existence and changing them. And so I went from believing that I was nothing and no one, capable of nothing, not able to do anything or be anything, to actually, I am me. And, you know, you separate yourself from what happened to you, and then that becomes something that happened rather than something that you are. And that's a real moment when you realize that what happened to you isn't you, it is something that happened.
That's so different. It's a huge thing, isn't it? Because I hear a lot when I work with people who've been victim of violence, abuse, rape, and all sorts, and even people with a very difficult childhood. And they always thought when they were young that what happened to them was making them dirty, was making them maybe slow or not intelligent, not lovable, not smart. But it's not what happens to you, it's what comes from you. And thankfully you got to this understanding eventually that what the other people was a reflection, what the other people did was a reflection of their own mindset, not of yours. It's a huge thing, isn't it? So you were not the victim anymore. You decided to be on the other side and say, right, I can do this with my life. That's such a good change. And you were about 25?
Yeah. So I was 25 when I needed to start kind of looking at changing. But the real change started when I moved away from the environment that I was living in, where I was, I experienced all of the kind of negative things, either from my own choices or, as a result of other people's opinions of me. And I think, that was the catalyst, because then you've got a blank canvas and you can paint that canvas in the design and the colors you want. And I know that's very cliched and a lot of people say it, but it's true, because your mind is the canvas. Okay. The thoughts that you have, the beliefs that you have create the experience that you have. Okay. What is in the mind attracts to you. Okay. Every person, place, and experience that you have that is reflective of who you think you are and what you believe. Okay. And when those thoughts change, and that is primarily what we need to be doing in order to feel better, is to change what we think. Now, the thoughts and feelings have to be aligned as well. So when we think of ourselves as someone who's good, decent, honest, lovable, loved and loving, and so on, that has to feel good. Okay? Because a lot of people say, well, I've got a positive mindset, but actually the feelings don't match with the thoughts, with the mind.
Yeah. Okay? Big problem.
Yeah. So while they say to people, well, I'm quite a positive person, I don't know why all these things seem to go wrong in my life. Well, as we know, if we don't actually change how we feel, very quickly, those feelings are going to override all of those positive thinking, and we do become what we feel. The feelings charge up the thoughts that we have. And so if we think about, for example, I'd really like to, have a partner and be in a relationship, but the feelings say, well, actually, that's really scary. And that makes me feel really anxious because things went wrong in the past. And if they go wrong again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
How many people are paralyzed because they think, I'm going to fail. This happened before, so I'm going to fail again. That's your subconscious mind talking.
Indeed. So to overcome, we need to really be able to change those deep-seated beliefs, thoughts, ideas, and also to change how we feel about ourselves, because we are at the center of everything. What comes to us is a reflection of what is in us. And when we change our thoughts and feelings, we change the world. Okay? So everything starts with it within. That's where we need to go, within, because the answers lie within. They do not lie outside of us. Okay? And right now I'm in a much better place. But that place that I've arrived at is because I took full responsibility for my life, for changing it, for doing the work that needs to be done. And don't get me wrong, it is a journey. I still, continue to evolve, change, look at things, and it's a journey, as I said. And so for anybody that's listening to this, it's good if you struggle to do it yourself, or you struggle to make the changes, it's always good to have someone to help you, to assist you, to guide you. And I think that anybody that can enable us to do that is certainly somebody that we need to be kind of, engaging. Because if we don't know that we don't know, then it's very difficult to change what we don't know.
But also, when you are in the situation, you are inside the bucket of hot water, and it's very murky water, you can't see, because you're mixing everything with your own feelings. And an unbiased person from outside can see straight away what's the problem. And then they will challenge you and say, is this really true that every single person that you love is going to leave you? Every single time. These blanket statements that we make, right? And the person challenges you, and then you start thinking, oh, actually, but we don't dare challenging ourselves very much because we are so comfortable swimming in our own thoughts. Give us tips because we only have about 5 minutes to close. And let's say that we have a person listening and they do not have any belief in themselves. They cannot see a future, maybe in relationships, maybe in work, or maybe in a love relationship as well. And something in their past has showed them over and over and over, no, you're not capable, you cannot hold the job, you cannot do this, you cannot do that. So what steps would you recommend from your point of view? Because you've been through all and you built yourself from scratch. What would you say to them?
So the first thing is to take your time and take small steps. Do not try to do too much too quickly because you're setting yourself up to fail. Okay? But one of the biggest things that we need to do, all right, is to take full responsibility for what we are thinking and feeling as adults, okay, and subsequently what we're doing, and equally full responsibility for what we're experiencing. Now, the biggest change comes is when we start to and learn to love and accept and approve of ourselves. And that is the biggest piece of work we can do, okay? When you start to meet your own needs, when you start to know what your needs are and you take responsibility for meeting them, you are no longer dependent on someone to meet them for you. Because the danger of putting your needs into somebody else's responsibility is when they leave or when they back out, you're left still feeling empty. So that bank of self-esteem needs to be, you need to deposit as much into it as you possibly can so that it's overflowing. Because if someone comes along and takes a bit of self-esteem from your bank, okay, it's not a problem. And you can bounce back from it, okay? But when your bank of self-esteem is in deficit, is in the red, people keep withdrawing from it, there's nothing else. And then what happens is, whatever happens to us, we are crushed by it and we can't bounce back. So, in essence, we need to learn to like and love and accept ourselves fully as we are, because we are what we are, what happened has happened. We can't change the past. The past is over, okay? The future doesn't actually exist. It's just imaginary most of the time. Everything you did in the past and everything you will do in the future, you'll do it in the moment. So the moment is always where we can start to change. And so we need to look at those thoughts that are unhelpful. We need to understand how those thoughts have materialized and how they've come about. We need to look at how those thoughts create those really negative, intense feelings, and subsequently the choices and decisions we make are based on the thoughts and the feelings. So change comes from within. It doesn't come from changing your job, your relationship, your hairstyle, your town, your country. They are temporary things, okay? It comes from within. And that change then is permanent, okay? And then what happens is your world starts to reflect the changes that you make internally. When you think good thoughts about yourself and you feel good about yourself, whatever happens to you, you simply bounce back from it. And you take things in your stride, you become much more relaxed, easygoing. You're not looking for other people or things to fill you up and meet your needs. You're quite happy with who you are and what you are and what you're doing and where you're going. And life just becomes easier.
I just wanted to make a quick comment because, and I wanted to say thank you so much for making it short enough so that the audience has it all in half an hour. Because you could be talking, you could be writing a book about this, and but a few weeks ago, I listened to a podcast from Caroline Leaf, who is, has got PhDs and all sorts in psychology. She's from South Africa. And as she was saying about this, she went to schools that were really performing really badly in South Africa. And then she started to teach the kids 6-7 hours a day with workshops. They are worth it, they're lovable, they're smart, they can do it. And they changed the vision. A few months later, when the performance of the school was measured, these schools were like the top schools. Because the only thing that changed, and these are places with 30, 40, 50 people in a room with just one little chalkboard, no devices, their mindset changed, and so everything was possible. And this is exactly what you've been telling us, that nothing had changed, you changed. And this change is possible when you start to see this huge potential, because you realize that you're here for a reason. You are you. Of course, you want to progress, you want to get better. It's not that, I'm like that, I'm never going to change. But you're telling us, Warren, that everyone has this huge potential, and the fact that the other people leave us or have tortured us, they have emotional abusers, maybe they were narcissists, that makes them bad. It doesn't make us bad, and we have always the chance to bounce back and change. And I know that you told me about a book and the charity and the huge plans. We only have 1 minute, but please, can you tell us what else are you doing now to help people to move forward, to do this step forward, to change their life?
Yeah, so in my current role, I work with young people, and again, I keep it very simple, because I think simple means that it's achievable, and if it's achievable, it's doable, and if it's doable, people know that they can change. So I'm currently in the throes of writing a book called Mental Health in Mind, making sense of it, and also setting up a charity of the same name, Mental Health in Mind. And it is about helping people to change their mind, because that's where our mental health is. And if you think about it like this, we go to the gym to improve our physique, to get fit. Why are we not going to a gym to get our minds fit and well, and putting as much effort and time into our mental health as we are with our physical health? So this is a mental health gym for the mind, because you get your mind right and you get your life right.
That's it. It sounds brilliant. We have to go because it's 32 minutes. We have to keep to our timing, to be nice to lip sync and just keep to the contract. But I am so thankful that you came to the show, Warren. So thank you so much. And I'm absolutely excited to have presented you today, because your message is a message of hope. And nowadays, more than ever, we need this message of hope. We need to know that we can do it. We can get there. And whatever behavior we keep repeating, we don't have to be criminals. It could be self-sabotage, procrastination. It could be like this burnout. We have to keep going and going. We can never stop, because we have to please that person, the daddy, the mommy that wasn't there, the siblings. All these are learned behaviors. And with the help of a therapist, you can go through each behavior, each issue, and slowly dig out and say, where does this come from? How do I fix this? And then slowly peel off the layers and become the new you. And you have shown us that this is absolutely possible. We don't have to repeat, rinse and repeat those behaviors. You can achieve success. So please let us know when I will be posting these links or anything. Keep in touch. Let us know where these charities, these books will be. So I'm sure that our audience will be very interested in knowing about it, and maybe even collaborate with you. Who knows what's going to happen. So thank you so much for being on the show, Warren.
Pleasure.
All right, thank you guys for listening. This was Create with France, and today with Warren. And I hoped that this episode was good for you, and maybe you want to share it with one of your friends, because it could be helpful if they are feeling down and they're feeling they do not have any hope. Please click like and share and write a review, so we can have more people being blessed with the knowledge that there is hope to create the life you want. So thank you very much again and take care. Bye bye. You have listened to Create with Friends.